Mark Weaver was just an ordinary man living in the quiet, unassuming town of Ravendale. A small-town antiquarian by trade, his life revolved around dusty books, forgotten objects, and an ever-growing collection of history that seemed more like a hobby than a career. He wasn't looking for adventure. He was simply content with his routine. However, as fate often does, it had other plans for him. It all started on an ordinary rainy evening as Mark was cleaning out a forgotten attic. In the back of his shop, the room, filled with old trunks and boxes, had a strange, musty smell that clung to everything inside it. As he sifted through stacks of brittle papers, something unusual caught his eye. Beneath a pile of tattered newspapers, there was a small, weathered metal box. The box had intricate engravings on it, symbols that Mark had never seen before, patterns that seemed out of place in the otherwise simple town of Ravendale. Curiosity tugged at him as he reached for it. The box was heavier than expected, and when he pried it open, a faint smell of ancient paper wafted out. Inside, he found a rolled-up parchment, its edges frayed and fragile with age. Mark couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement as he carefully unrolled the paper. The text was written in an ancient form of Latin, mixed with strange symbols. He couldn't decipher immediately. His fingers traced over the faded ink, but one thing was clear. It was a map of Ravendale, marked with locations in red ink. The map's detail was startling. Mark recognized the landmarks, the streets, and the buildings that had long been part of the town's history, but there were areas marked in a way he'd never seen before. Hidden places, forgotten corners of Ravendale, spots that seemed insignificant but were clearly meant to be noticed. The markings were deliberate, precise. It was as if someone had intentionally drawn this map with the sole purpose of guiding someone toward something. Intrigued, Mark studied the parchment further. There was something else that stood out, a series of symbols along the edges of the map. They didn't seem to fit with the Latin script, but there was an unsettling familiarity to them. They resembled ancient runes, the kind of symbols Mark had seen in old texts, but he had never fully understood their meaning. It was as if they were a part of a larger story, one that was meant to remain hidden. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled upon something far more important than a forgotten relic. The map led to something buried beneath Ravendale, something old, something dangerous. The more he thought about it, the more he realized this was not just a relic. It was a key to uncovering something long buried. The idea gnawed at him throughout the evening. He had never considered himself the adventurous type, but something about this map felt different. It wasn't just curiosity, it was a sense of urgency. A part of him knew that what he had discovered was not meant to be uncovered. It had been hidden for a reason, but another part of him, the part that loved history and the thrill of discovery, knew he couldn't let it go. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He kept picturing the map in his mind, the red markings, the symbols, and the sense that it was leading him toward something monumental. Was it just an old treasure hunt? Or was it something darker, something far more dangerous? The more he thought about it, the more questions arose. Who had left this map? And why? What could possibly be buried beneath Ravendale that was worth keeping secret for so long? As the rain continued to pour outside, Mark made a decision. He had to follow the map. He didn't know where it would lead or what he would uncover, but one thing was clear: his life was about to change forever. Little did he know, this decision would open a door to a world filled with danger, conspiracy, and a secret that had been buried for centuries. The search for the truth had just begun, and it would take Mark down a path he never imagined, testing his courage and his understanding of the world around him. The discovery of the mysterious map set something in motion that Mark Weaver couldn't stop. The quiet, safe life he had built in Ravendale was no longer enough to keep him satisfied. His mind raced with the possibilities of what he had uncovered, and as the days passed, the map haunted his thoughts. He knew he had to follow the clues, no matter how dangerous it seemed. Something told him that the answers were out there, buried, beneath the surface of his seemingly ordinary town. The first location marked on the map was a small, overgrown cemetery just outside the town, hidden among thick trees. Mark had passed by it countless times but never paid much attention. It was the kind of place people drove past without a second thought. But now, it called to him. The rain had stopped, leaving the world covered in mist and cool, damp air, and Mark set off towards the cemetery, his heart thumping with a mixture of excitement and unease. When he arrived, the graveyard looked like any other, old, neglected, and forgotten by most of the townsfolk. There were tombstones of various sizes, many cracked and leaning, as if time itself had decided to claim this place for the earth. The headstones were weathered, and the names were barely legible. But there was one grave that stood out to Mark. It wasn't because of its size or the name on the stone. It was because of the strange symbol etched into its surface. It was a symbol he had seen before, the same markings on the map. A series of lines and curves, intertwined in a pattern that felt ancient and significant. The symbol was small but unmistakable. Mark's pulse quickened as he knelt down and gently wiped away the thick layer of moss and dirt that had accumulated over the years. Beneath the grime, the symbol stood out in sharp relief. For a moment, Mark didn't know what to do. He stood frozen, staring at the stone, trying to make sense of it. It felt like the cemetery itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to act. He ran his fingers along the engraving, tracing its edges, but the stone didn't reveal anything new. That's when his eyes caught something else. There was a slight indentation along the side of the gravestone, barely noticeable unless you were looking closely. He moved closer and, after some careful examination, found a hidden compartment in the grave. Mark hesitated, unsure of what he might find. The air seemed heavier now, as if something unseen was urging him to open it. With a little effort, he pried it open. Inside, nestled between layers of dirt and old crumbled wood, was a small metal object. It was a key. An old, ornate key that seemed to shimmer despite its obvious age. The key was small but heavy, its surface worn smooth by time. The design was simple yet intricate, and Mark could tell it was no ordinary key. It wasn't just the craftsmanship that intrigued him. It was the way it seemed to call out to him, as if it were meant to be in his hands. His heart raced as he carefully examined the key. The symbol that was engraved on the gravestone was also present on the key, matching the markings from the map. It was as if the key had been waiting for him, hidden away until the right person found it. The question echoed in his mind. What did this key open, and why had it been hidden in a grave? Mark knew he had to take it with him, but as he stood up, a sudden rustle in the bushes broke his concentration. He spun around, his breath catching in his throat, but the cemetery was empty. There was no one in sight. Yet, The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He wasn't alone. He couldn't explain it, but the sense of being watched was undeniable. Mark quickly tucked the key into his pocket and hurried out of the cemetery, his mind racing with questions. Back in the safety of his shop, Mark examined the key again. It was beautiful and mysterious, but it also felt like a piece of a much larger puzzle. The markings on the key and the grave were unmistakable. They had to be connected to whatever secret the map was leading him toward. But what did it all mean? What was hidden beneath Ravendale that was so important that someone had gone to great lengths to ensure it stayed hidden for so long? As he sat there, deep in thought, Mark realized he couldn't stop now. He had uncovered the first piece of the puzzle, but there was so much more to uncover. The key, the map, the symbols, they were all part of something much bigger. And Mark knew that whatever lay ahead, it would be far more dangerous than anything he had ever imagined. The first clue had been found, but the journey was only just beginning. As Mark Weaver stood at the threshold of the unknown, the weight of his discoveries pressed heavily on his shoulders. He had found the map, uncovered the strange symbol in the cemetery, and retrieved the mysterious key. But the deeper he dug, the more the question loomed over him. What did it all mean? Mark had always been a solitary man, preferring the quiet comfort of his books and artifacts. But now, this journey was far beyond something he could tackle alone. One evening, while poring over his notes in the dimly lit corner of his shop, Mark found himself questioning his next steps. Who else could he trust with what he had uncovered? The gravity of the situation wasn't lost on him. He had stumbled onto something dangerous, something that had been hidden for decades, maybe even centuries. The air was thick with secrets, and Mark knew he needed help, someone who understood. More than just the history of Ravendale, it was then that Anna Thompson appeared in his life. Anna was a historian at the nearby university, a woman known for her extensive research into the town's past. She had a reputation for digging into the obscure, the parts of history that others overlooked, and Mark had heard her name mentioned, in passing. He had always thought of her as an academic, someone who would be more interested in writing papers than uncovering dangerous secrets. But now, he wasn't so sure. Anna had heard rumors of Mark's recent discoveries. Whispers had started to spread throughout Ravendale, especially after Mark's visit to the cemetery. People noticed his growing obsession with the town's hidden past, and word eventually reached Anna. She approached him cautiously, her curiosity piqued, but Mark had not expected her to show up so soon. One evening, she walked into his shop, and as their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them. It was clear that Anna knew more than she let on. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the urgent anxiety Mark had been carrying ever since his discoveries. She had been studying Ravendale's history for years, she explained, particularly the town's founding and its many mysterious disappearances and unsolved events. She had never been able to put the pieces together, but now, with the map and the key in hand, she believed Mark had stumbled upon something truly extraordinary. "You're not the only one who's seen these symbols," Anna told him, pulling out a collection of old journals and papers she had collected over the years. "I've been researching these runes for a long time. There are mentions of them scattered throughout the town's history, but no one's ever been able to decode them." As Anna flipped through the pages, Mark felt a rush of relief mixed with unease. She was the key to unlocking the mystery. Anna's knowledge and experience would be invaluable, But it also meant that they were no longer alone in this pursuit. Whatever they uncovered from here on out, they would be walking into a world of danger and deception together. Anna's research revealed a disturbing truth. The runes, which had once been dismissed as meaningless, were tied to an ancient system of guardianship. Guardians who had sworn to protect something buried deep beneath Ravendale. These guardians were not simply members of the town's founding families. They were part of a secret organization that had worked for generations to keep a powerful and dangerous artifact hidden. The artifact, Anna explained, was said to be a device capable of altering time itself. The more Mark and Anna delved into the history, the more they realized how tightly the town was connected to the artifact's secrecy. The map Mark had found was only part of the puzzle. There were other locations marked across Ravendale, each representing a key part of the path that led to the artifact's resting place. But they weren't the only ones seeking it. Someone else knows about the artifact, Anna warned, her voice low and urgent. The organization that protects it, they've been watching us. I'm sure of it. Mark felt a chill run down his spine. The strange encounters he had experienced, his feeling of being watched, the unsettling rustling in the cemetery, now made sense. They were not the first to follow the trail, and they certainly wouldn't be the last. The secret Mark had uncovered was not meant to be found by outsiders. There were forces at work, people with power and resources, who would stop at nothing to keep the artifact hidden. In the days that followed, Anna and Mark became partners in the truest sense. They split the research, combining their knowledge of history, the map, and the symbols. Together, they retraced the locations marked on the map, hoping that each would bring them closer to understanding what lay beneath Ravendale. Their shared commitment grew as they discovered more cryptic clues and hidden passages throughout the town, each more unsettling than the last. But as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, Mark found himself questioning not just the artifact's power, but his own role in this growing conspiracy. Anna had become his ally, but how much did he truly know about her past? Was she entirely on his side, or was there more to her story than she was letting on? These doubts gnawed at him, especially as they ventured deeper into Ravendale's shadowed corners. But despite the uncertainty, Mark knew one thing for sure. They were in this together now, and the truth they sought would either save them or destroy them all. As Mark and Anna ventured deeper into their investigation, they began to realize the stakes were higher than they ever imagined. The quiet, peaceful town of Ravendale had become a labyrinth of secrets, and every step they took seemed to lead them into more danger. The map, the key, and the cryptic symbols they had uncovered were only the beginning. Something far more powerful and dangerous was hidden beneath the town, a force that had been guarded for centuries by a secret group determined to keep it buried at all costs. Mark and Anna's efforts had not gone unnoticed. The closer they got to unraveling the truth, the more they felt the weight of being watched. They had known there would be opposition, but the realization that they were being hunted by a shadowy organization was unsettling. Every clue they followed seemed to lead them to a new, unexpected adversary, someone or something that wanted to keep Ravendale's darkest secret buried forever. Their journey led them to an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, one that had long been rumored to be haunted or cursed. The mansion had once belonged to one of Ravendale's founding families, and its decay mirrored the town's own forgotten history. According to the map, this was the final location they needed to explore. This was where the next piece of the puzzle would fall into place, where they would find the answers they sought. The mansion loomed ominously as Mark and Anna approached, its broken windows and crumbling stone walls casting eerie shadows in the fading light. It was clear no one had lived there for years, and the overgrown ivy crawling up the sides of the building made it look like something out of a forgotten dream. Yet despite its dilapidated state, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something powerful still resided within. As they entered the mansion, the air grew cold and heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The floorboards creaked beneath their feet, and every step they took seemed to echo through the empty halls. They made their way to the center of the house, where a large staircase wound upward to a darkened second floor. But before they could ascend, they were stopped by a voice that chilled Mark to the bone. "Looking for something?" the man said, stepping out from the shadows. Mark's heart raced as he recognized the figure in front of them. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit, and had an air of authority that seemed to emanate from him. His sharp features were unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a coldness that made Mark uneasy. "I'm Simon," the man said, his voice calm but filled with a subtle menace. "And you've come too far." The words hung in the air as Mark and Anna exchanged a quick glance. Simon was not an ordinary man. He was not someone who had simply stumbled into the mansion like they had. He knew exactly who they were and why they were there. Mark's instincts told him that Simon wasn't alone, that he was part of something much bigger. Simon smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You think you can uncover this town's secrets, don't you? But you're mistaken. There are things buried here that should never see the light of day. Things that could destroy everything you know. The organization I work for has been protecting these secrets for generations, and we're very good at what we do." Anna's face paled. She had known there were forces protecting the artifact, but hearing Simon confirm it was a sobering moment. The group he belonged to had been watching them, and now it was clear that they would stop at nothing to keep the truth hidden. "We're not afraid of you," Anna said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "This town's history belongs to everyone, not just your organization." Simon's gaze sharpened. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. What you've uncovered isn't just a piece of the town's past. It's a force that could change the course of history. People like you, trying to unlock its power, will bring about chaos. You think you can control it, but you'll destroy everything in the process." Mark took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't fully understand the danger Simon was talking about, but he knew one thing. He couldn't back down now. He had come too far, and he had to see this through. "I'm not backing down," Mark said, his voice firm. "We're going to find out the truth, whether you like it or not." At that moment, Simon's demeanor shifted. The calm mask slipped, revealing a steely resolve beneath. "Very well," he said coldly. "If you won't stop, then I have no choice." Before Mark or Anna could react, Simon motioned to two figures, who stepped out of the shadows. They were tall, their faces obscured by masks, and they moved with a precise, almost mechanical grace. Mark's instincts screamed at him to run, but there was no time. The two enforcers lunged toward them, their movements swift and ruthless. A fight broke out in the mansion's darkened hallway. Mark and Anna struggled to defend themselves, but the enforcers were well-trained, their attacks calculated and unyielding. The air was thick with tension as Mark fought to hold his ground. He wasn't trained for this kind of confrontation, but the adrenaline surging through him gave him the strength to keep fighting. Just as Mark thought they were cornered, Anna managed to land a hit, knocking one of the enforcers off balance. The momentary distraction gave them the opening they needed. They dashed toward the door, barely managing to escape the mansion before the enforcers could catch up. Breathing heavily and covered in bruises, Mark and Anna made it to safety. Their hearts were still pounding, but they knew they had narrowly escaped something far worse. Simon's warning had been clear. This was just the beginning. The fight for Ravendale's darkest secret had only just begun. And now, Mark and Anna knew that they were up against more than just a town's hidden past. They were fighting against an organization with the power to destroy them and everything they had uncovered. The stakes had never been higher. The weight of their discovery was beginning to feel unbearable. Mark and Anna had uncovered something more dangerous than either of them had imagined. What had started as a simple curiosity about a town's forgotten history had morphed into a deadly pursuit, one that had drawn them into a dangerous web of secrecy, shadowy figures, and moral uncertainty. The closer they got to uncovering the truth, the more they realized just how high the stakes were. Every choice, every action had consequences that could alter the future of Ravendale, and perhaps the world itself. As they sat in Mark's shop late one night, their faces illuminated, only by the dim light of an old desk lamp, the reality of their situation sank in. They had discovered the key to a powerful artifact buried beneath the town, an artifact that had been hidden for centuries by an organization sworn to keep it secret. According to the texts they had uncovered, this artifact was no ordinary relic. It was a device capable of altering time itself, a device with the power to change the course of history. Mark's mind raced with the possibilities. He had never intended to uncover something so monumental. He was a historian by trade, a lover of the past, not a warrior or a protector of the future. And yet, here he was, standing at the crossroads of a decision that could either save or destroy everything he knew. But the truth was more complicated than just uncovering the artifact. They were no longer the only ones searching for it. The organization that had been guarding it for generations, Simon and his masked enforcers, would stop at nothing to prevent Mark and Anna from gaining access to the artifact. They had already shown how far they were willing to go to protect their secret. Mark had seen the cold determination in Simon's eyes, the ruthlessness of the enforcers. It was clear that these people would do anything to prevent the world from knowing the truth about the artifact, and they were willing to kill to protect it. In the days that followed, Mark's thoughts grew darker. He knew that if he and Anna continued their pursuit, they would be putting themselves, and possibly everyone they cared about, at great risk. The artifact was too powerful, too dangerous to be left in the hands of anyone. What if it fell into the wrong hands? What if Simon's group used it to manipulate history, to control the future? The possibilities were terrifying, but if they destroyed it, what would that mean? Would they be erasing a piece of history that could change the world for the better? Anna seemed to be wrestling with the same questions. The more they uncovered, the more she began to question her own motivations. She had dedicated her life to studying history, to uncovering the hidden truths of the past. But now, with the knowledge of the artifact's power in her hands, she wondered whether she was ready to deal with the consequences of such a discovery. One evening, as they sat in the dim light of Mark's shop, Anna broke the silence. "Mark, we need to talk about what we're doing. We're not just dealing with history anymore. This artifact, it's not just a relic. It's something that could change everything. And I don't know if we're the right people to decide its fate." Mark looked at her, his eyes filled with the same uncertainty. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if we're wrong?" she said, her voice tight with emotion. "What if uncovering the artifact's power is a mistake? What if we can't control it? What if it causes more harm than good? We can't just walk away from this. We're already too deep." Mark felt his stomach tighten. He had been so focused on the thrill of discovery, on the need to uncover the truth, that he hadn't fully considered the weight of the consequences. But Anna was right. The power of the artifact was something beyond anything they could comprehend. There was no way of knowing what would happen if it fell into the wrong hands, or if they tried to use it themselves. The temptation to control time, to change events, was powerful. But was it worth the risk? Anna's words echoed in his mind. What if we can't control it? Mark had always believed that knowledge was power, that uncovering the truth was the right thing to do. But now, faced with the moral dilemma of whether to unlock the power of the artifact, he wasn't so sure. He thought back to the organization that had been guarding the artifact for centuries. They believed the secret was too dangerous to be revealed, but their motivations were unclear. Had they been protecting the artifact to keep the world safe, or had they been using it for their own gain? Were they the true villains in this story, or were they just trying to protect humanity from itself? The more Mark thought about it, the more conflicted he became. If they destroyed the artifact, they would be erasing a part of history, a part of Ravendale's past that could hold the key to solving some of the world's greatest problems. But if they used it, would they be playing God, altering the course of history for their own benefit? Could they truly be trusted with such power? In the end, Mark knew that the choice wasn't an easy one. They were standing at the edge of a precipice, and one wrong move could send everything tumbling into chaos. The truth was, there was no right answer. Whether they decided to expose the artifact or destroy it, their actions would have consequences. Consequences that they might not be able to undo. With the weight of this knowledge heavy on his shoulders, Mark finally spoke. "Anna, whatever we choose, we need to be sure. We're not just making a decision for ourselves. We're making it for the future of this town, this world. And we need to be ready for whatever comes next." Anna nodded slowly, her eyes filled with determination. "I know. But I don't think we can make this decision alone." They had come so far, and now, the question of what to do with the artifact was the most important decision of their lives. Would they use its power for good? Or would they destroy it, sealing away its potential forever? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: their journey was far from over. The weight of their discoveries had driven Mark and Anna to the edge. For weeks they had uncovered the town's hidden secrets, its dark history, the powerful artifact buried beneath Ravendale, and the shadowy organization that had spent centuries guarding it. The more they learned, the more they realized that they were standing on the precipice of a decision that could alter the course of history itself. But now, the moment of truth had arrived. The artifact was within their reach, and Mark and Anna had to choose. Would they destroy it, ensuring that its power never fell into the wrong hands? Or would they use it, risking everything for the possibility of changing the world? The cold, damp air of the underground chamber seemed to close in on them as Mark and Anna stood before the artifact. It was unlike anything they had imagined. An enormous ancient device, humming with an eerie energy. Its surface shimmered with symbols that seemed to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeat. Mark had seen this device in fragments before, in texts and sketches, but now, standing before it, in the flesh, he could feel its power. It wasn't just a relic from the past. It was alive in a way that terrified him. The decision was simple in theory, but nearly impossible in practice. If they used the artifact, they could change the course of history. They could undo mistakes, correct wrongs, or even prevent catastrophes before they happened. The possibilities were endless, but the danger was equally immense. Who could be trusted with such power? Could they control it? Or would they become the very thing they sought to destroy? Anna's face was pale as she studied the artifact, her mind racing. Mark, we've come this far, but we still don't know what we're dealing with. We can't just take this power for ourselves. We have no idea what it will do, how it will change things. What if we make it worse? Mark's gaze never left the artifact. The temptation to use it was overwhelming. He had spent his entire life searching for answers, uncovering the truth, and now he had the power to rewrite history. Could he walk away from that? Could anyone? I know, Mark said, his voice low. But think of the possibilities. We could stop wars, prevent tragedies, fix mistakes we can never undo. This is what history has been leading us to, Anna. We can change everything. Anna shook her head, her eyes filled with concern. That's exactly why we have to destroy it. We can't risk letting this fall into the wrong hands. The organization, Simon, they've been guarding it for a reason. And if we use it, what's to stop others from doing the same thing? Who decides how history should be changed? Mark swallowed hard, the truth of Anna's words settling in. She was right. The artifact wasn't just about making things better, it was about control. And control over time itself was a power no one should have. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. No one could be trusted with such power. If they used the artifact, they would be playing God, and history had shown that those who played God often ended up destroying everything they touched. But the other side of the argument gnawed at him. The artifact's potential was too great to ignore. If they destroyed it, they would be erasing the chance to right so many wrongs. They could heal the world, fix the mistakes of the past, prevent wars before they started. Wasn't that worth the risk? As the minutes passed, Mark's mind spun in circles, torn between the two choices. Finally, he turned to Anna. She was looking at him with a mix of fear and resolve, but there was something else in her eyes, a deep understanding of the gravity of the moment. I don't think we can keep it, Anna said softly. Not if. It means risking everything. We've seen what this thing can do. It's not meant for us. We've come too far, and now we have to make the right choice. Mark felt a heavy lump form in his throat. He didn't want to agree with her. He wanted to use the artifact, to make things right, to change the world. But deep down, he knew she was right. The risk was too great. They had uncovered a secret meant to remain buried, a power that could undo the very fabric of reality. Some truths were too dangerous to be revealed. With a final, reluctant sigh, Mark nodded. You're right. We can't use it. We have to destroy it. Together, They approached the artifact, its humming energy growing louder, almost as if it were aware of their decision. Mark's heart pounded in his chest as he reached for the device, the weight of their choice hanging over him like a storm cloud. This was the moment that would define everything. With one action, they would either preserve the past or destroy the future. They set to work, using the key they had found earlier to deactivate the artifact's power. The mechanism clicked and whirred as they worked quickly, their hands trembling with the enormity of what they were doing. The energy in the room grew colder, as if the artifact was resisting their efforts. But Mark and Anna didn't stop. They couldn't stop. The consequences of failure were too great. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the device powered down. The humming stopped, the shimmering light faded, and the room grew still. Mark exhaled, his chest tight with both relief and sorrow. They had done it. They had destroyed the artifact, locked away its power forever. But even as the last of the energy dissipated, Mark couldn't help but wonder, had they made the right choice? Would they regret it? Or had they just saved the world from something far worse? As they turned to leave the chamber, Mark knew one thing for certain: the journey was over, but the world would never be the same again.